Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hang out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
And for better or worse, 3 ways to add cinematic cuts into your D&D game.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
So you had proposed a question as, should we be using cinematic cuts in our tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons? Is there value to this in the game?
Well, when you watch movies, TV, you read novels, there's always ways to know what's going on somewhere else. You always can see what the bad guy is up to. Typically, that's part of the mystery of an RPG. You don't know what the bad guy is doing. But I think there's times where I think the tension could be higher if you know what's going on. I go to Harry Potter a lot because I think it's a really well done novel series. And through Harry's dreams, his visions by having the connection to Voldemort, he knows key important factors that are going on in the wizarding world, and he then can use that knowledge to his advantage, or sometimes be terrified of it, and it kind of plagues him throughout like the second half of the story, and it begs the question, is there a way to take this kind of stuff and use it in a D&D game?
Well, I guess the first thing we have to do is kind of quantify what these different aspects are, how they can be used, and also look at what we're doing. Because here's the problem, right? D&D and tabletop role-playing games are a cooperative storytelling game that we build together. The GM generally is basically the world, and the players interact with it. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, it doesn't make sense for the players to know what the bad guys are up to or they're doing because they're not there. They have no sensory input. It's literally impossible for them to know unless they're scrying on them and things like that. Now, I've seen people when they run their games, they literally describe scenes and actions as if it was a camera. The camera zooms out. And it irks me a little bit, I have to confess. Now, granted, if that's how you play your game and that's what you enjoy, that's fine. You can do it however you want. But for if it breaks immersion for me a little bit. But I know some people, they don't care, they don't mind, and they see it like being in a movie instead. Like maybe I think in terms of a book and they think in terms of a movie. I don't know which one is right or wrong, but I think we have to break out some of these elements and decide, well, what are these cinematic cuts we're talking about?
All right. Well, so first and foremost, you can go to flashbacks. All right. You're having a memory. Okay. These are easily done. You thought happens much faster than words, so you could literally have a vision that takes you a couple minutes and it happens like that, so it doesn't take up any actual time from the actual character's choice, and you can flash back to a memory. Here's where you have the ability to insert a scene that might be important to a character. Either it's something that you want to reveal something, or you as the GM, you want to then reveal something for a player character that they might have forgotten, or that you guys have talked, but it's now being shared amongst the players.
Now, okay, so flashbacks, dream sequences, and visions. All of these, they're great. These actually can work very well in your D&D game. Doesn't break immersion. It doesn't get weird at all. And you can also use it for a place to add a little bit of player agency, especially with flashbacks. You could use it, like you said, from the GM side, but on the other side of the screen, say a player is using, a skill they have, like survival, right? And the GM calls for a check, they make it, they do the thing, and maybe this might be a place for the player to insert how they learned to do that, and maybe flash back a little bit, and discuss it a little, and maybe the GM could even role play with them a little bit if you wanted to, as long as that's okay for your table and everyone agrees to that.
Now, as you brought up, there's also the case. It's probably much less used, but that's when someone actually uses divination magic. Someone is using some way of scrying or far viewing. Either I'm looking in through the eyes of my familiar. I'm actually using a scrying pool or a crystal ball. Here, they literally have the ability to see somewhere that is not at their locale.
Yeah, and that all just fits into the normal parameters of D&D. You don't have to do anything there. There's no problems. So far, so good. I don't think this is going to affect the game. It might add some in a negative way. Anyway, it may impact it in a positive way with making it more immersive and more interactive and fun for your players, and giving them clues and stuff like that. The dream sequences and visions are always tough, because how do you make that stuff come to fruition in a game where you don't have control of everything as the GM, But it could be fun. It could be symbolism. Now, moving to the next one. This is the one that I think most people are going to have a problem with, if they have a problem with anything, and that is third person perspective. And that is exactly when you're talking about, well, what's the villain doing?
And this is the one that part of me really wants to do, like a short campaign arc to test this out and really see, like, okay, I'm setting up, this is your bad guy. You're aware of it through some way, shape, or form. You get some knowledge of what's going on through, insert some other way, similar to, what these, stories and movies that you happen. It's like,
here's the part where I think you're getting it mixed up and a little bit wrong. You're confusing you, the reader, you, the one taking in the entertainment, with the character in the book or in the story, because you know what's going on over here and you know what's going on over there. It doesn't cross.
That's true.
You're the third person looking in. Now, I've seen this. I've seen people put it into their game, and it's great, especially because we're in a world where we're streaming games and stuff like that. It's almost like we're creating stories and entertainment. It's not almost, we are, right? So, part of you as a storyteller would want to put that out there, so for the people watching. But if you remove people that are watching and it's just the table, there is literally no reason to do this that makes sense in the game, right? Without going back to like some kind of scrying or something like that. But in that case, that's within the parameters of the game, and that's not a third person perspective in the sense that it's still like the 2-person perspective, right? It's just you're now able to look and see what that other person is doing.
Right. Years ago, I ran a game, and I actually had a friend who used to be a part of the table, moved away, couldn't game with us locally anymore, and we kind of bounced ideas of what the bad guys were doing off, like away from the table. There was always time that happened in between sessions. So it's like, okay, well, what was the bad guy doing? And I realized that by always asking that question and always thinking, the bad guys were getting far more done than what the good guys were doing, because the good guys were always dealing with all of these problems and didn't know of all of the bad guys that were set up. So it's like I'm preparing more things that they can ever possibly contend with if they don't have an idea of what's going on over here. So I was doing more work than I should have been doing, and I was creating more problems by doing this. So it kind of like has led me down this thought pattern of, well, how do you get the good guys to know what the bad guys are doing?
And well, the other thing too is you may not, like, the time sequences may not be matched up. Like, inadvertently, you may have had the villains doing more stuff in less time, because all you're really doing is talking about it, where we have to do it at the table in a confined amount of time, where if you're just talking about it, there isn't really any constraints or confines on that. And if you're not going back and going, well, is this really doable in that amount of time, becomes a whole other thing. And I get, like, well, will that enhance the experience? It will make it so much cooler if, like, we can flip back and forth between the heroes and the villains and tell this epic story. But I feel like the problem with that is you cannot do it without influencing the story and what the characters are going to do and what the players are going to do. It kind of disrupts and breaks the immersion of what a role-playing game is. So we have like a third thing from cinematic cuts.
So then the last thing is actions, and that is something that, like, when you watch, say, like 300, and you see the player, not the player, you see the actor go
Can't stop thinking in D&D. I can't stop thinking in D&D.
You see the actor go through these cool motions as they cut this guy's head off, or they kick the guy's feet out from under him, getting into more descriptive narrative over what's actually taking place. I sometimes, do this to make it more interesting, or to, get the players more into what's actually going on.
you could do this as the GM or as the player. Sometimes I'll ask the players, I'll be like, hey, you killed this monster. How'd you do it? And they're like, and when you do that for like the first time, you see the players' eyes light up like, I get to say hi often. Oh yeah, I cut him in quarters and like, whatever. And it doesn't matter that they only struck, once, but you're like, your sword is like lightning everywhere as you leave monster pieces. You leave monster pieces flying in your wake.
So I've done this, many times as well, where it's like, okay, whoever gets that last hit, okay, you describe what happens. And some players, they really like to eat this stuff up, and they go on for this, 3 or 4 sentences of what this millisecond of an action looks like. But you got to have fun with it.
Well, and sometimes too, I will I might take liberties as the GM, and I might do a description to kind of like reiterate that D&D is an abstraction of combat, and like, oh, the blade licks out multiple times, or with lightning speed, dozens of blows rain down like hammers upon your shield, leaving you exhausted entire take 6 points of damage. So I might mix it up that way to try and like convey a little bit of what hit points and things like that mean.
I mean that breaks the whole mechanical concept of D&D out of the norm, because most people are like, oh well, I've got 300 hit points, and I've got swords and arrows stuck in me all over the place. I'm missing a leg, but I can keep fighting because I'm fine.
I still have a hit point.
Because I still got hit points. Whereas like they try to describe it as, okay, well, you've got this endurance, and it's not until like you're down to really like you're 1/10 of your hit points or less, or maybe even down to like your last couple hit points before you actually take anything that would be considered a serious wound. Everything else is like you get tired, you get, minor cuts,
scrapes and bruises.
Yeah.
But, all of that being said, so you can use cinematic cuts in your game with descriptions to kind of illustrate this stuff. The trick and key here is to do it in a way that doesn't bog down the game and keeps things flowing. You really wouldn't want to do it all the time. You'd want to pick key moments and emphasize those, or maybe the first time or last time one of the players drops an enemy in the combat or something like that. So use sparingly. I think it would add a lot to the game. If you were to use it with every single round for every single player, it's going to bog things down crazily. Another way of thinking as well is like, think about when Elrond summons the flood, and it's got horses running at the front of it. Like, letting your players describe their spells maybe a little bit differently would be another way. You could be a little more cinematic with it. Maybe when your wizard casts Burning Hands, for instance, and the flames come racing out like screaming demons is what the enemy sees, or what you project.
A mouth opens up, and it actually releases this more of a breath weapon than anything else.
But either you can do it any way you want it. You could reflavor it a little bit, and again, like, if it can be done fast and it keeps the game moving, why not?
Do you guys use this in your games? Do you have any cool stories you want to share? However you want to continue the conversation, you can do so down below in the comments. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out at nerdarchy.com.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.